This is CBC Here and Now.
What never-before-seen discipline records say about conduct at the Royal Newfoundland Constabulary.
Poaching and stealing, it's robbing our children in the future.
Conservationists are calling for fisheries guardians to be kept on longer. Coming up on Here and Now.
Our bargaining committee, our staff, and a number of our inshore council members have been threatened.
These types of behaviours are not acceptable in 2023.
The tension is high as the standoff continues in the crab fishery and the boats stay tied up. Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. I'm Peter Cowan. We begin tonight with a story about police and public trust. When a complaint is made against a Royal Newfoundland Constabulary police officer, the process almost always unfolds behind closed doors. In some cases, it's a secret hearing where an officer can be disciplined for bad behavior. The public never finds out unless it goes to an adjudicator, which is rare. That's why CBC Investigates filed an access to information request with the RNC for those records. After a successful appeal to the province's Information and Privacy Commissioner, we can now tell you what we found out. Ariana Kelland started looking into this in last June and has this report.
Here it is, a list of alleged misconduct at the RNC from 2010 up until last August. Hundreds and hundreds of internal, public, and even criminal complaints. Some substantiated, many dismissed. Among the top complaints, conduct unbecoming or officers behaving badly, incomplete investigation, neglect of duty, and excessive force.
The challenge with this is that the police are by and large trained in a use of force model. And that is the foundation of much of the training that the police receive in our province.
Adrienne Peters was hired to help educate RNC cadets in 2015 when they went through schooling at Memorial University. And her work often intersects with policing. She likes to deal with data. And in this province, she says, that's hard. Peters says in order to deal with a problem, you have to understand it first.
To me, it's a systemic culture of fear and control is what we're talking about. And until we can try to remove some of that from these environments and cultures, we're going to be stuck, I think, grappling with what is the reality, what are the actual numbers, and what do these even mean, to then try to get some understanding for then how to move forward.
For Lynn Moore, the current process of handling public complaints is fraught with trouble. From the behind closed doors hearings to what she says is an inherent conflict within the complaints process.
The position of Chief of Police is in a very difficult position in terms of being a champion for the police and trying to represent the police as a proud and noble institution, and at the same time being responsible for discipline of police officers.
Currently, the police chief holds most of the power. The Public Complaints Commissioner reviews the chief's decisions, and while she can disagree and send the matter to a public hearing, that's only happened 3 times in a decade, despite dozens of public complaints each year.
They might end up going to a hearing and the chief is present, the chief's lawyer is present, the officer's present, the officer's lawyer is present, and the person who's making the complaint is the only person in the room that doesn't have counsel.
So, what is the key to maintaining the public's trust? Moore says it's starting with opening the doors, then inviting proper oversight. And it's not just members of the public who feel they're at a disadvantage. Some police officers do too. Their concerns over wait times, potential career impacts, and more were laid out in this 2022 RNC Workplace Review.
The ones that don't become substantiated or don't end up in some sort of a larger outcome, I think for those officers, that experiencing can be really debilitating and can further be detrimental to their ability to do the job.
The chief of the RNC declined to comment. Ariana Kelland, CBC News, St. John's.
So how exactly does the process work for reporting complaints against police? Well, stay with us. A little later in the show, Ariana Kelland will be back to explain that process. Well, an update now to the death of a 25-year-old man in St. John's. Police are calling it a homicide. The RNC says the man was found injured on the ground in Sebastian Court early Sunday morning. He was later pronounced dead in hospital. After working with the office of the chief medical examiner, the RNC says the death is considered a homicide. The investigation is continuing. No arrests have been made, but police say they don't believe the homicide is random.
Well, the province is warning of the high risk of forest fires due to dry conditions. Already, we've seen 33 wildfires recorded in 2023. This time last year, there were just 2. We're seeing more than 6 times the damage to land this year compared to last. Now, over the weekend, volunteer fire department from the South Coast pulled together to fight off this forest fire, which burned mere meters from homes in Harbour Breton. Our thanks to Andy Power, who captured these incredible photos of the fire and its aftermath. So forest fire season officially kicked off yesterday. You can see the map already. We're looking at pretty much a low to moderate risk through parts of central, eastern Newfoundland, and a high risk for southwestern portions of the island. But up across Labrador, your forest fire season doesn't start until the middle of May. But you know, we just finished April, and if you take a look at this is the percentage of the amount of precipitation that we would typically see. So right across the province, we are between 25 to 50% of what we would typically see. So conditions definitely dry as we head into forest fire season. And this is something that we're going to have to keep an eye on, because we've been under this pattern where we're seeing these northerly winds and dry conditions through parts of central, the west coast, even up across Labrador. Today, no different. 13 degrees in Churchill Falls. That was the hot spot across the Big Land, and Stephenville was the hot spot across the island. Now, temperatures did climb into the single digits, about 5 degrees in St. John's today. And if we take a look at what's happening outside, we're still seeing that cloud cover, although the sun did come out a little bit this afternoon. We're currently sitting around 3 degrees, still have that wind chill in there as well, around -2, but those winds are still out of the northeast. Now, I do see a change in the forecast. That's good news, but we do have some more of this to get through first. We'll talk all about it coming up.
It's game 1 of round 2 for the Toronto Maple Leafs, and we've found some of the biggest fans in Newfoundland. That story coming up.
Go Leafs, go!
While the tension is high in the crab fishery, and it shows no signs of cooling off tonight. Allegations are being made that a delay in the crab harvest is being prolonged by threats and intimidation. And today, processors say time is running out on the province's largest and most valuable fishery. The Fisheries Union still insists the harvest is not economical. Terry Roberts has the latest.
There are signs everywhere that harvesters are ready to slip their lines and chase after snow crab. But one of the biggest interruptions in the industry in decades drags on. And today, the processing sector spoke out.
The longer the fishery is delayed, the greater impact it has on the premium product Newfoundland seafood is known for.
The arbitrated price was set last month at a minimum of $2.20 per pound, a jaw-dropping collapse from last year's opening price of nearly $8. Harvesters have refused to untie their boats, saying the price is too low for them to fish, and thousands of people who normally work at 24 crab plants remain off the job, with many losing their EI benefits.
This time last year, boats like this had landed more than 31 million pounds of snow crab. So far this year, 0. Meanwhile, in Quebec and the Maritimes, their landings grow every day at wharf prices that are just a few cents higher than what's being offered here.
So what's the sticking point? Jeff Loader says many harvesters are prepared to fish, but fear the consequences. He says the evidence can be found all over social media, intimidation and harassment toward those who want to fish.
These types of behaviors are not acceptable in 2023. They're offside the legislation. We do not tolerate it in schools, in our workplaces, and it should not occur in the fishery.
The union acknowledged the tension.
Our bargaining committee, our staff, and a number of our inshore council members have been threatened.
The wholesale price for crab, meanwhile, has slipped even lower in recent weeks, raising fears among harvesters that buyers would request a further drop in raw material price from the price-setting panel. But plant owners have given a written guarantee. They won't ask for a price review until May 19th, and the longer the season is delayed, the less attractive the harvest becomes.
Producers are not going to fill warehouses and cold storage with lower quality crab.
What he's outlined here is a recipe for absolute economic disaster for the province.
The Fisheries Union quickly shot down Loader's offer.
It's most likely, after 3 weeks, they'll ask for reconsideration, where the bulk of the industry will be fishing for far less than $2.20.
Greg Pretty says many prefer to go bankrupt at the wharf than fish for such a low price.
The economics of this fishery are absolutely ridiculous.
The union is accusing producers of trying to drive a wedge between harvesters and is calling for government intervention, both in the form of emergency aid for affected workers and an overhaul of the price-setting mechanism.
This is the biggest tie-up protest that I've seen in 40 years. And there's a reason for that. We're not talking nickels and dimes here.
This situation is threatening an economic collapse, one that would cripple many communities, and tensions remain really high. I spoke to one harvester here this morning who told me that if boats leave the wharf at the current price, there will be war. Terry Roberts, CBC News, St. John's.
As the recreational trout and salmon season gets closer, conservationists are calling on the federal government to do more to protect fish and prevent poaching. Here now's Mark Quinn on how more fisheries guardians could be the solution.
The sound of spring runoff and wet weather swelling rivers like this one is music to people who fish. Dreaming about this has sustained them through the long winter. It's a pleasure they want to pass on to others.
I grew up with my dad taking me, and he passed away at an early age. Now I'm taking my son.
Large runs of salmon once spawned in this very river. They're all but gone now, and numbers have dropped in many rivers across the island. Fordham worries his son won't have the experiences he's had, and that's why he's calling on DFO to act.
Keep the river guardians that they have on now for a longer period of time. Hire them on earlier to look after the trout and that, and salmon along coastal waters, and keep them hired on into the fall, October, November, so they can keep track of the poaching efforts going on in the rivers.
Traditionally, DFO contracts more than 100 fishery guardians from the beginning of salmon season in June until it ends in September.
Yeah, ready when you are.
Ken McDonald is one of the people who's been advocating for change. And last year, the federal department extended the season for about 40 guardians by 4 weeks.
It was a challenge to get anyone to listen at times, but Minister Murray did listen last year and extended the season at the end by a number of weeks to make sure that the river guardians, as they're known as, were able to be on the rivers while the salmon were still there. Is there more that can be done? Yes, indeed there is. And I think to do it properly, to give the right protection to the Atlantic salmon, we need to extend it a couple of weeks, maybe on the front end and on the back end.
CBC has asked the federal minister Joyce Murray about doing more to prevent this, but federal employees who handle media requests only returned to work yesterday and haven't sent a response yet. Back in Ottawa, McDonald says he'll continue to push for more protection and expects that at the very least, the extended season for guardians last year will be repeated this coming fall.
I'm not saying there's many people at this, but there are people who still continue to be poachers on our local salmon rivers. And we've got to make sure we are catching these people, or at least deterring them from being able to take part in that activity.
Rivers like this one, the Waterford River in St. John's, open for trout on May 15th. Salmon rivers open on June 1st on the island and June 15th in Labrador. Mark Quinn, CBC News, St. John's.
The provincial government says only one company is left bidding on a new provincial prison. 2 other bidders backed out. Now the infrastructure minister says his focus is doing more due diligence on that last remaining company, Marco. He says that's taking them more time.
There were 3 proponents in it, and they withdrew for their own reasons, and from employment challenges to focusing on other projects. That wasn't my decision. It was their decision, but we were left with a proponent that wanted to proceed, and we're hoping to proceed in terms of getting the project completed.
Well, completed at what cost? The PC opposition says its sources say the price of replacing Her Majesty's Penitentiary is going up. When it was first announced 4 years ago, it was estimated it would cost $200 million. But now the minister admits inflationary pressures are driving up that cost, but he wouldn't give a figure. The opposition has heard it's a lot more.
Well, industry sources who tell us, that it's over budget. And, something that we're concerned with, and, they're saying $520 million, which is about a 60% increase. So, it's certainly something that's very concerning.
Well, it's a 19 years in the making. The Toronto Maple Leafs will play in the second round of the NHL playoffs tonight for the first time in nearly 2 decades. And for the team's fans in this province, who are used to disappointment, there's now a feeling of optimism. Here now's Malone Mullins explains.
Essentially, Johnny Bauer signed mask, jersey, blocker trapper.
It was a long time coming for this superfan. On Saturday, a first-round clincher, 19 years in the making.
It was amazing. So many years of those pucks not going our way and going in the net. I gotta say, there was a few tears.
Patty and his daughter, Nora, are proud owners of this sprawling collection. And even though they're hundreds of kilometers from the city their beloved hockey team calls home, there's no sense of distance from the passion.
We like to call this Patty and Nora Shrine, actually. Devoted Leaf fans for so many years. Lots of pain, lots of smiles, and lots of laughs, especially on Saturday night. But yeah, this is our little shrine.
And stress.
And stress, yes, lots of stress.
No Leafs fan can forget the pain of the past 2 decades. Blow after blow after blow. But for this fan, all those losses only made Saturday's historic win that much sweeter.
There's a lot of screaming, a lot of yelling. I might have came close to throwing one of my best friends toward the ceiling when I picked him up.
As Charles Pickett points out, Newfoundland and Labrador is a blended sports community. Enemies are everywhere.
Leafs take the brunt of the jokes and the butt end of the jokes.
But all those years of being little more than a punchline still haven't put a dent in this man's sales.
Today has been pretty much all Leafs. Everybody's getting ready for tonight now. Big first game against Florida, and we've sold lots of jerseys, hats, T-shirts, a few pairs of slippers. A bit of everything is going today. Everybody's getting ready.
Andrew Corbett has been serving sports lovers in St. John's his whole life. The passion he sees from Leafs fans, unwavering, no matter the score.
But the Leafs fans are definitely the most diehard of everyone. So we were speaking earlier, most teams, as soon as a team gets put out in the playoffs or if they're not doing good in the season, the fans kind of disappear and you don't sell much merchandise or anything else. But the Leafs fans, regardless if they're doing good, if they're doing bad, they're always supporting the team and buying merchandise, and you can always see them out there wearing it.
That same optimism could be found among complete strangers on the street today.
Who's going to win this round, Leafs or Panthers?
Toronto Maple Leafs.
You think so?
Oh, I do.
The fans in Newfoundland are no strangers to heartbreak. But for 10-year-old Nora, this year, for the first time in her life, there's hope.
I'm going to have to deal with him and his crying and all of the ref calls. It's going to be stressful. I just know it.
But it's going to work out in the end, right?
Very much so.
Malone Mullen, CBC News, Paradise.
Oh, all the stress of the playoffs. And we want to stick with hockey because Dawson Mercer and the New Jersey Devils are also moving on to the second round of the NHL playoffs. The Devils won 4-0 last night in New Jersey. That gives the team the series win over the New York Rangers. It was the first playoff series for Bay Roberts native Dawson Mercer. He put up 3 points in 7-game series. Mercer and the Devils play again tomorrow night. Well, what a treat finally to see a bit of sunshine today. Here's the glorious view from Harbor Grace this afternoon. Just beautiful, although you may notice that the iceberg, the X-rated one that got all the attention, well, it's missing an appendage now. Still a beautiful sight, and it's so nice to see that sun out.
Yeah, it certainly is. Most of us saw the sun today. It is very much moving back in, and we probably won't see it for a couple more days. I'll have the full forecast coming up.
This weather update is brought to you by the Healthcare Foundation Home Lottery. Early bird prize deadline is midnight Friday, May 5th. Order tickets now at hcfhomelottery.ca.
It's a bad sign when you feel like you've won the lottery because it's 5 degrees outside today. You walked outside, you're like, this is starting to be pretty nice.
Yeah, we saw that sunshine. So temperatures bumped up a little bit more than they were supposed to.
I'll take that. Anytime you want to do, I'll take it.
Yeah,
no complaining here.
It's not a bad thing, that's for sure. Temperatures, across the province were much warmer than that. Let's take a look at where we were sitting. So quite warm in Terra Nova, 10 degrees, Marystown 11, and then as you head towards the west coast, that's where the temperatures were the warmest across the island anyway, and Churchill Falls sat around 13 degrees. But yes, 5 degrees in St. John's today. That means that we broke the record of that continuous. We had 15 days, and so we finally broke that record, which is finally nice, but unfortunately those temperatures are going back down below 5 degrees and will stay there as we head through to the weekend. At the moment, we have not a whole lot of cloud cover to talk about along the northeast coast, but it is starting to move in along southern areas of the island as well as Labrador. So Lab West woke up to some snow after it has been nice for the past little bit, so that's certainly a change in season for you. But that cloud cover is starting to work its way further south and will continue to do so as we head through the night tonight. We do have some of that precipitation just to the south of the island at the moment, but this area of high pressure is pretty much going to keep it at bay as we actually start to see a little bit of stronger winds move in. So right now we have just a little bit of moisture in the atmosphere, which is why we've been seeing some fairly nice weather, not a whole lot of drizzle and not a whole lot of fog, and even seeing some breaks in that cloud cover. But as we head through the next couple of days, particularly tomorrow evening, we're going to start to see some of those blues move in, and that means we're going to see some higher moisture, and that is going to continue really as we head into Thursday and even into Friday, along with some stronger winds. So what does that mean? That means that we're going to see fog, and that will be the story pretty much all along the northeast coast. As you can see here, the fog forecast showing that fog developing into the evening hours on Wednesday, and then not going away, not until we head into Friday. By Friday afternoon, this is when we'll really see some of that dense fog, and then again into Saturday. But note, a little bit of a wind shift. So this is Saturday overnight. By the time we get into Saturday afternoon, we should be gone. It should be gone, most of that fog. Right now, we don't have a whole lot of fog to talk about. It's mainly offshore at the moment, and those temperatures are sitting into the single digits for St. John's, down to 3 degrees. That wind chill -2. And as you head towards the west coast, temperatures gradually get warmer. It's still a beautiful 13 degrees in Stephenville at the moment. And temperatures up across Labrador starting to dip a little bit, 6 in Lab City and 9 in Happy Valley Goose Bay. Temperatures towards the coast are a bit cooler than that even still. Right now, we can see that line of showers just to the south. And like I said, that area of high pressure is pretty much going to keep them at bay. Now, I'm not ruling out the showers tonight because it's certainly still possible, but that cloud cover will continue to creep in from the north and head across the province essentially. And again, some showers are certainly possible. We'll likely see drizzle develop, and then for the northern peninsula and southeastern Labrador, really all along the coast of Labrador, the potential for some flurries for tonight. Temperatures will hover somewhere between -1 and 1 or 2 degrees along the northeast coast, and then fairly similar temperatures somewhere between 0 and about +3 for the island. Lab City will sit around -2. Winds not overly impressive, about 20 to 40 kilometers per hour. That will pretty much be the story. Tomorrow, as we see that moisture move in, there is a better chance of showers. It'll start at least for southeastern portions of Labrador, and then eventually we'll see some heavier shower activity, or heavy drizzle, I should say, develop through the overnight period and into Thursday morning. But this is also when we'll see that fog accompany with it. But pretty much across the board, we're looking at that chance of showers as we head into the afternoon and evening hours tomorrow. Temperatures 4, 6, 8 degrees for the most part. Generally light winds, 10 to 15 kilometers per hour as you head through central, 2 to 7 or 8 degrees. And then towards the west coast, we'll see temperatures between 10 and 11 degrees for the most part. Maybe a few peaks of sun, but they'll be few and far between. Northern Peninsula, southeastern Labrador, you're looking at your temperatures again between 4 and 5 degrees. And also showers or flurries, the story. The hot spot, again, Happy Valley Goose Bay and Churchill Falls, although it will be a little wet to start your day. So that's your tomorrow forecast. We'll look ahead when I come back.
He was playing at the Arts and Culture Center here in St. John's, and I got the call to be part of the show. Of course, you know, I mean, there's so many iconic ones.
From sundown to early morning rain, we're celebrating the life and legacy of Canadian icon Gordon Lightfoot. We'll hear from a local performer who had his own Lightfoot experience.
o'er the mountains and Mariana calling me again.
A sad day in the music world with the death of Gordon Lightfoot, and Ian Foster is a singer, songwriter, musician here in St. John's who opened for Gordon Lightfoot back in 2014, and he joins me now. Ian, thanks for coming in.
No problem, Anthony. Happy to be here.
What was that 2014 opening for Gordon Lightfoot like?
Yeah, it was a pretty special moment, of course. He was playing at the Arts and Culture Center here in St. John's, and I got the call to be part of the show, and of course, you know, it's always great to play, but in an event like that, you just sort of want to be around the environment of someone like that. You know, I have photos of, you know, backstage taking pictures of the guitars being used and all that, and got to chat with him very briefly, which was obviously special as well.
What's your sense of his place in the legacy of Canadian music, especially folk music?
Yeah, I mean, last night as I was going to bed and the news was breaking, you know, I saw Rolling Stone share the headline with genius level singer-songwriter Gordon Lightfoot, Canadian, you know, and of course I think we all as Canadian songwriters owe a debt to people like that. You know, he's regarded around the world as one of our greatest exports and greatest writers.
I noticed that you did put one of those pictures of you and Gordon Lightfoot up on your own social media today. What was it like actually meeting him?
Surreal, inevitably. Like, you know, it's generational with someone like Lightfoot, of course, you know, like some of my earliest memories of listening to music were with my dad playing Gordon Lightfoot albums, and Dad saw him back when he was in Halifax at the Art College in the 70s, you know, and tells the story of seeing him in concert. So obviously there was that cool kind of interesting full circle of getting to actually play a concert with him, you know, a generation later. So yeah, it was certainly a special moment.
Are there certain songs of his that on your favorite list in terms of where you put his music?
Oh God, it's so hard to pick. I mean, Nancy and I covered "Song for a Winter's Night" for our Christmas album.
Nancy is
Nancy is my partner in life and in song, Nancy Hines. So for our Week in December album, that was one of the songs that we covered, and of course, you know, I mean, there's so many iconic ones. You know, I think about someone local, like a local legend like Ron Hines. It's a similar thing, you know. When I talk about Ron, I often say he just seemed to have a song for everything, right? There seemed to be, you know, in terms of telling the culture in one way or another. And Lightfoot is obviously that way as well. Whether it's a heartbreak song or a historical song, he had music for it.
Interesting you say that too, because Ron Hines sort of recognized the fact that Gordon Lightfoot was a major influence on him, and then Ron Hines became Ron Hines, and now you became you. So there you have it. Listen, I really appreciate you coming in. Thank you very much. I'm sorry it's for a sad occasion, but I appreciate you sharing what it was like meeting one of the greatest Canadian musicians. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
On the Go host Anthony Germain there chatting with Ian Foster, who's releasing some music of his own. Foster's record Close to the Bone comes out this week. Well, singer-songwriter Gordon Lightfoot died of natural causes in hospital in Toronto last night. He was 84 years old. He started off singing in a church choir and had ambitions to become a jazz musician. But fate took him in a different direction. CBC's Deanna Sumanak-Johnson has more on the life and legacy of Gordon Lightfoot.
Remember me, I'm the one who loved you.
By his early 20s, Gordon Lightfoot was already a mainstay on CBC's variety shows.
Let's have a real big hand for Gordie Lightfoot.
In the 1960s, as folk movement gained popularity, so did his songs.
Hear the mighty engines roll.
That song, Early Morning Rain, would also eventually be sung by Elvis Presley. Just one of many American stars who admired the man who stayed in Canada even as his international fame grew.
If you could read my mind, look, what a tale my thoughts could tell. The legend lives on from the Chippewa down.
In 1975, he wrote what he considered his finest song, The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, inspired by the previous year's sinking of a Great Lakes freighter that took down the lives of 29 of its crew members.
But the load of iron ore, 26,000 tons more than the Edmund Fitzgerald weighed empty.
When you get the bug of songwriting,
it stays with you all the time. You never quite forget about it.
At the 1986 Junos, another famous admirer, Bob Dylan, inducted him into the Canadian Music Hall of Fame.
All right, here he is now, Gordon Lightfoot.
But more than any accolades, what Lightfoot wanted was to continue recording and touring, even after the 2002 abdominal hemorrhage that almost took his life. The road to recovery was long and tough, but Lightfoot's love of the stage kept him going.
Sometimes I think it's a shame. I get feeling better when I'm feeling no pain.
You know, I want to be like, like Wilf Carter and Stompin' Tom and Willie Nelson, and just do it just for as long as is humanly possible.
He actually continued performing well into his 80s, even through other health scares, and staying Canada's troubadour till the very end,
A key was kept inside a shoe.
capturing life's stories, big and small, in timeless melodies. Deanna Sumanak-Johnson, CBC News, Toronto.
Morning glories on my mind.
I don't know, the phone rang, a horn blew, they said I won a free cruise.
Well, speaking of beloved Canadians, our very own Rick Mercer is being inducted into Canada's Walk of Fame. The award-winning satirist is also a best-selling author with nearly a dozen honorary doctorates. This marks the 25th year for Canada's Walk of Fame, and he's only the second Newfoundlander and Labradorian to be on it. Congratulations, Rick. Well, returning now to the story on police and public trust. As we told you earlier in the show, very few complaints against police are ever made public. So how does the process work for reporting those complaints? Well, here now's Ariana Kelland explains.
When it comes to making a complaint about the conduct of a police officer, it's a little bit of a choose-your-own-adventure. It's a lengthy roadmap with diverging paths that in some cases can take years. This is how it works. First, it depends on what kind of complaint it is, if you're an RNC employee or a civilian. For the sake of this explanation, let's stick with public complaints. Now, there is a clock running out on this. You have to file the complaint within 6 months of an incident happening. If you do that, RNC officers that are assigned to handle internal complaints will begin an investigation into their fellow RNC officers. They have 3 months to get the job done. Then, that report goes to the chief of police. Right now, that's Patrick Roach. And there is no time limit for how long that can sit on his desk before being dealt with if he feels it is unsubstantiated. The chief will either dismiss the complaint or settle it, or he could find that the complaint has merit. He has 30 days to direct a charge be laid. If he picks this option, the complainant can appeal within 15 days. And that's where the independent investigative arm comes in. They're called the Public Complaints Commission. There is one commissioner, Twyla Reed, who leads an investigation, and that can result in the appeal being dismissed or referred to an adjudicator who has 3 months to render a decision. Now, let's go back to this guy for a second, the head of the RNC. Remember, he had 2 options. If the chief decides the complaint has merit, he can direct a charge be laid against an officer, and there will be a hearing before the chief. It's here that an officer can be ordered to do training. They could be demoted, stopped from getting a promotion, suspended, or dismissed. All of this happens behind closed doors, and the public never knows. And there's no way to find out. Unless that officer or complainant appeals and goes to the Public Complaints Commission. Remember them? And it determines it needs to go to a public hearing. So, how often does that happen? Well, dozens of public complaints have been made each year, and only 3 have made it to a public hearing in the last decade.
Of course, a lot of people are thinking about fertilizing lawns this time of the year, and it's not much sense of applying fertilizer early in the season because the plants can't absorb the nutrients.
Well, great news for gardeners. Another sure sign of spring. The Tuesday Gardening Crosstalk call-in is back on CBC Radio's The Signal. Ross Travers was on as guest host, answering many of your questions on how to prep your garden beds. Here's his advice for people who've planted bulbs.
It's just a matter of making sure that if there's any mulch on them, that you pull back the mulch and that so the soil can warm up and just they pretty well look after themselves this time of the year. There's no sense putting any fertilizer on them now. After you transplant them later on, when you prepare a new place, then you could apply a little bit of general purpose fertilizer to the soil. And of course, you really need to add lime to the soil because most of the soils in Newfoundland are very acidic.
Well, staying with gardening, a project involving some seniors in New Brunswick has expanded into the community, and it's not all about the growing. The group is also nurturing people's physical and mental well-being. Take a look.
The seniors planted over 1,100 seeds. And so, of course, we will use what we can for the garden, but the rest we let them come up you know, and we repot them, and then we give those all away. So to people in the food banks that come, people who might just, we know in our community, we give some away to the nursing homes to start for their gardens, and anybody can have access to them. In fact, last year we sat a table out and said, you know, free tomatoes, free cucumbers, plants. The first year when it started, we got funding from what was called the Healthy Seniors Pilot Project. And that was a good chunk of change. So it allowed us to build an accessible garden for seniors. That was the goal.
There's raised beds so that any senior that's having difficulties, you know, in maybe bending over to the ground to, you know, to plant them or to nourish them, it allows them to use the raised beds. And also anyone is in a wheelchair.
So we've produced about 1,500 pounds of food, between 12 and 1,500 pounds of food in the last 3 years, just in this little, you know, 50 by 60 garden.
Oh, this year I bring from Portugal some seeds. Last summer, a friend of mine bring over. Go on vacation, he bring over. I say, bring seeds for me, this.
3 reasons I garden is and teach gardening is to feed people, to help with habitat regeneration, and to also help heal hearts. So, you know, for that emotional, mental, spiritual part that we get from connecting with soil and good soil and the earth and each other.
You get to know all these people, you know, and some of them are very experienced gardeners, and you learn a lot from them. I really enjoy watching things being planted and then watching them grow and then reaping the benefits.
Oh, yeah, I eat every year. Oh, I love it.
This is street photographer Richie Perez. He's been showing up all over Newfoundland and Labrador, meeting folks and taking their pictures, but also talking to them and connecting with their stories, with their communities. Wednesdays this month on Here and Now, you will meet Richie and some of these people. We're calling it The Signal Connects.
Well, Saturday was both International Dance Day and Independent Bookstore Day. So how do you try and combine those two things? Well, our colleagues at CBC Arts arranged for 6 dancers to dance in 6 local bookstores across the country, including here in St. John's. See if you can spot them.
My bag again, okay, the cash come in, okay. I don't keep much liquid, I put it back again, oh. I'm in my bag again, okay, the cash come in, okay. I don't keep much liquid, I put it back again, okay, okay.
Notes up on the rail, bougie off the scale, G'd up a holy grail, greenbacks in the mail, off the rails, scope like Galileo, G'd up a holy grail, holy whale.
Hey, where are you? Hey, you need me too. Hey, where are you?
Never know till it's gone. It's a love fire. Can't put it out no more. It's a love fire. Can't put it out no more. So good, looking so good. We the perfect fit, so good, looking so good. So good, looking so good. We the perfect fit, so good, looking so good. We the perfect fit.
Well, Ashley, I think we're going to leave the dancing to the professionals because after that, nobody wants to see me attempt anything even close to that. But unfortunately, it looks like the fog is going to cha-cha-cha its way back into St. John's later on this week.
Yeah, it's definitely a good couple of days to curl up with a book and just kind of ride it out at this point. It looks like, yeah, that fog will move in as we head into Wednesday evening and then pretty much stick with us for a little while. But let's take a look because there's some more shower activity expected with that as well, especially all along the northeast coast, southeastern portions of Labrador, but really all of us across the island will see some showers through the day on Thursday, but eventually it looks like some clearing up across Labrador, at least coastal areas and central areas of Labrador as we head into the evening hours. Likely going to stay cloudy though for those of you in the west. You'll see your clearing through the overnight period. Daytime highs should sit somewhere between 4 and about 8 degrees across the Big Land. And then similar story across the island, single-digit temperatures, mid-single-digit temperatures along the northeast coast. And then the further away from that onshore flow you get, you should hit about 10 degrees in Port aux Basques. But again, likely cloudy, just a few peaks of sun in the mix for you through the day. Now, as we head into Thursday evening and Friday, an area of low pressure gets closer than we've been seeing for the last little bit. And that is going to bring some moisture pretty much for the eastern half of the island. However, as you head towards the west coast and again along the south coast Friday afternoon, we will likely see some clearing. At least that's what it looks like at this point. And as we head across to Labrador, we're still looking at the potential for some flurries through the afternoon and evening hours along the coast, and that will linger through central areas of Labrador as well. Now, daytime highs for coastal areas will be between 2 and about 4 degrees. Again, further away from that, between 8 to 10 across Labrador. And then for the island, about 2 degrees for St. John's through the day on Friday, maybe 3 if we can squeeze out another degree But the temperatures will certainly be cool. Gander, you'll sit around 4 degrees as you head towards the west coast, though. Corner Brook, 8 and 11 in Port aux Basques. So pretty much all along the south coast, you're looking at your temperatures between 8 to 12 degrees through the day on Friday. Again, sun should peak out, though, as we head into the afternoon hours. We'll also say goodbye to the fog along the northeast coast, which will be nice. Now, long-range forecast. By the time we get into Sunday, temperatures are going to start to warm up. This should be when we start to see the change. Next week does not look nearly as bad as it has been as far as that cloud cover is concerned, and temperatures are going to start to warm up, so that's certainly nice as well. At this point, 6 degrees though on Sunday for St. John's and eastern Newfoundland. Overnight lows will still sit into the minus single digits. Temperatures are going to continue to warm up for central Newfoundland as well, Friday, Saturday, and into Sunday. You should reach 10 degrees. Things will dry out as well as we see just some cloudy periods through the afternoon. Western Newfoundland will see a bit more sunshine than that, and temperatures back to the double digits, so about 12 degrees. But overnight lows are still pretty chilly, somewhere between -1 and about 0 degrees through the weekend. Now for eastern Labrador, you're looking at 10 degrees by Saturday, by Sunday 9, but it will come with some showers. And then for western Labrador, this will be a flurry chance as we head into the evening hours on Sunday. Look at your temperatures down to -4. So just before we leave you tonight, this is our weather photo. I love this one. You can see the
beautiful
sunset and some fog there. Thank you so much. This is in Lassie. Madge shared that shot with us. If you have any you'd like to share with us, send them to Facebook, Twitter, or email them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
I was just telling you yesterday with that beautiful sun picture. I said I love seeing sun and icebergs. And look at this, Madge delivered with that beautiful photo.
Yes, very wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, it'll be nice. There's at least a little bit of promise for some sun in the weekend, so we'll just have to hold on to that hope. Bad news, though, for anyone who's flying in and out of, because it sounds like we're going to have some of those similar problems like we had before with.
Yep, we'll have to see. It really all depends on the wind.
Well, thanks so much for watching, everyone. Have a great night.
Good night.